in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant, and circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. The stream will stop prior to the public is able to view this live stream via our website at www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, a recording will be made available on our website. The opening prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask you to give your blessing to this council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. Amen.
Amen.
We acknowledge the people past and present of Wadawurrung, Jar Jar Wurrung, Eastern Maar and Watchabollock tribes whose land forms the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respect to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of their tribes on whose land we meet today. Any apologies?
Jim Nolan.
Apology for Jim Nolan, thank you. 6, notice of disclosure of interest by councillors or officers. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a disclosure to make. I have an interest in one of the community grants, so I'll absent myself from that item of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Item 7, confirmation of the previous minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 15th of June 2021 and closed meeting of Council held 5th of June 2021 as previously circulated to Council be confirmed. Would someone like to move that those meetings? Thank you, Councillor Clark. Second, and Councillor Kay. All those in favour? Thank you. There was no business arising from the previous meeting held on the 15th of June 2021. Members of the public are encouraged to ask questions of Council at ordinary Council meetings. In normal times, questions may be asked by members of the public in person. However, at present, community members are not permitted to attend Council meetings in person due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Questions can be submitted online through Council's website, by mail or hand delivered. Questions are to be received by 12 noon on the day of the meeting in accordance with the Council's governance rules. A person can submit a maximum of 2 questions on any topic, and the questions and its response shall not exceed 5 minutes. Questions are read by the chairperson during public participation. The chairperson may accept or reject any question or summarise the question before putting it to the meeting. The chairperson may disallow a question if it is phrased as a statement rather than a question, relates to matters outside the duties, functions and powers of Council, is defamatory, indecent, abusive, offensive, irrelevant or objectionable in language or content, is a repetition of a question already asked or answered, whether at the same or an earlier meeting, or is aimed at embarrassing a councillor or council officer. The chairperson or councillor officer to whom a question is referred may immediately answer the question or take the question on notice for the next ordinary meeting. And I have a couple of questions here from the for public participation. I thank these people for submitting the questions. The first question is from Moira Deeming, and the question is, under Victorian law, it is legal for local government councils to provide sex-based targeted services and facilities separately to gender identity-based target services and facilities. If not, why not? For example, can we legally put signs on a set of public toilets declaring that one is for biological males, including males with an intersex condition, and one is for biological females, including biological females with an intersex condition, and one is for people with transgender identities of any biological sex? If not, why not? As a taxpayer, I would like clarification on this issue and would like to know Councillor's opinion on the answer. I think that's to you, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Deeming, for your question. I'll provide an answer, although I must say that I'm not a lawyer and therefore my opinion should not be taken as a valid legal opinion. There are many laws in Australia and Victoria to prevent discrimination on attributes such as gender, with the more recent Gender Equality Act expecting councils to take positive actions to be taken to improve gender equality. We don't know of any law that prohibits identifying specific genders on public toilets. However, Council is making every effort to ensure that there are sufficient unisex toilets in key locations, recognising the need to remove barriers to anyone identifying as alternate or no gender. With regard to the legality of gender-based services and facilities, Council has recently been the recipient of funding specifically focused at increasing facilities for women participating in sport, which was used to build female-friendly change rooms in Carnham. It is difficult nowadays not to be extremely aware of discrimination and matters of equality, and these laws and regulatory bodies put significant emphasis on redressing any injustice that could be shown to minority groups. Council prides itself on the acceptance of everyone's diversity and differences and welcome them as part of our community and use of our services. I thank you again for your question, and I hope that that at least answered it sufficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. The next question is from Ian Murdoch from Carnham. The question is, on the 21st of June 2020, I submitted a letter by email to the Shire CEO. On the 23rd of June, I requested confirmation that my letter had been received, and I received that confirmation by email promptly from the CEO's personal executive assistant, Jay Bowker. Included in that response was an assurance the letter of response will be provided to me as soon as possible. The Victorian Ombudsman has advised me that a period of 28 days is the standard of reasonable expectation to expect in correspondence reply. That period has now expired and I have received no direct reply or indeed any response from the Shire office. Does Council subscribe superficially at least to the same standards as indicated by the Victorian Ombudsman, and if not, why not? And the second part to that is, if yes, how can Council explain the apparent lapse in compliance with those standards, and what assurances does Council give ratepayers that those standards are reliably applied? Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Murdoch, for your questions. Unfortunately, Mr. Nolan, the CEO, is on leave at the moment. So in his absence, we will take your questions on notice and assure you that the CEO will be contacting you personally in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. That's all of the public participation questions. We'll go to item 10, and it's items for noting. So I take it that councillors have had the opportunity to read those items. Is there any questions that arise from those items for noting? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make comments in the asset development and the planning point report, just to note the really good performance of the planning team that had a 28% increase in inquiries this year. Now, we've only converted that to a 2.3 increase in new permits, but I'm sure that we'll continue to work that up as we go over the time. And I think that it is certainly worth our community noting that we've had such a significant spike in people making inquiries about coming to Pyrenees or building in Pyrenees, which is really nice to hear. And also to note that over 90% compliance of the statutory timelines in terms of completing planning permits within the 60 days. So I think both of those things are worth mentioning to the community tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to comment on that? Councillor Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Comment on the council plan. Council is currently going through the council plan with the advent of our deliberative consultation. and we have had a number of meetings to involve the community and ourselves in creating the plan. Recently, we've been providing answers to questions about the plan. I'd like to ask that the questions and answers that have come through be put together as a document and forwarded back to councillors so that we can peruse the whole document with the notations of changes.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. And is any further questions in relation to that? Items for noting? Would that move, someone like to move those items be accepted? Councillor Easton, second, and Councillor Vance, all those in favour? Thank you. Takes us to item 13, items for decision. 13.1, economic development tourism, the Landsborough General Store. Who's taking this one?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek council endorsement of recommendations to re-establish a general store in Landsborough. Following a written request by the Landsborough Community Assets Committee, a proposal to undertake a business case for opening a general store and cafe at Landsborough was submitted to council in December 2020. It's around 3 years since the former Landsborough General Store was closed, and the local community feel that this closure has left a vacuum in the town in terms of community connectivity, social and economic benefit. In December, council endorsed $25,000 towards completing a business case, identifying the preferred location and appropriate business models. Consultants SED Advisory were engaged and started work on the project in March. The consultants' report identified that there is a potential for a profitable store to operate in Landsborough. And as this report contains commercial in confidence information, this was circulated separately to councillors. The report made recommendations on the preferred location of the store and costings for each option, the range of goods and services required to operate as a sustainable business, and the preferred ownership and governance models for operation. In summary, the preferred location of the store at Landsborough is the former Hodgetts store, as it is fit for purpose, the lowest cost investment option, and has an adjacent fuel outlet that complements commercial viability via associated sales. The ownership model is dependent on the considerations by the current owner of the investment required to activate the premises to a standard that satisfies the needs of the consumer demands outlined in the consultant's report, and which meet standards required for regulatory approval. And it's recommended that the operation of the business should be undertaken by a commercial operator. Actions required for reactivation of a store in Landsborough are detailed in the summary part of the report. And it's the officer's recommendation that council supports the owner of the former store to complete the investigations and costings of work required for reopening the store identified in this SED report, and continues to provide officer advice on regulatory matters. Secondly, takes steps to assist the Landsborough community to establish a not-for-profit community cooperative to raise funds to purchase and establish ownership of the store in the event the current owner chooses not to proceed with the upgrades recommended to the standards required for regulatory approval and subject to agreement with the current owner. And thirdly, receives a further progress report on the project by November 2021. Thank you.
Councillors, we have a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an alternative if I could, please.
Councillor Vance.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we leave this recommendation sit on the table for 1 month to allow the owner to present to council in person.
I'll second that.
Seconded, Councillor Easton. All those in favour? Thank you. That matter will be placed on the table and will be brought back before the August meeting. that takes us to 13.2, asset and development. Petition waste and recycling collection service, Haigs Lane. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with details of a petition from residents of Haigs Lane, Snake Valley, relating to changes to the waste and recycling collection service. A petition via a letter was received containing 7 signatures and requested that Haigs Lane, Snake Valley be excluded from the proposed waste collection service changes due to the following reasons. 1, that the proposed weekly truck collection would be an intrusion of residents' living situation and presents another increment of urbanisation on remnant bushland. 2, that residents are concerned that the proposed collection service will require changes to the lane, which will require removal of native vegetation. The lane is a narrow no-through road that provides 1 lane for vehicles. Significant widening and provision of this turning circle is indicated to allow for a waste collection truck. This will very likely involve removal and lopping of trees and destruction of other native plants, which are valued. And 3, on the basis of a lifestyle preference and avoidance of damage to the environment, residents ask that the Shire make an exemption for Haigs Lane. Council at its February 2021 meeting resolved to support a universal compulsory service across Pyrenees Shire for curbside collection. Council is prepared to consider exclusion of the waste and recycling services where it is impractical for a waste vehicle to access properties. However, council officers have inspected Haigs Lane and do not believe that access is impracticable. Some works have been undertaken on the road to enable a waste vehicle to access and turn around, consistent with other sites where a roadside waste service is to be provided for the first time.
I might just stop you there, Mr. Gowans. It looks like we might have lost Councillor Clark as we're experiencing some technical issue there. I can't see him on my screen. Is Councillor Clark still with us? So we may have to just halt the meeting at this stage until we can reconnect with Councillor Clark, please.
It looks like he's not there anymore.
I'm sure Councillor Clark will be doing everything within his power to get back into our orbit. And as
Yes,
we have a quorum,
yes, Mr. Gowans, if you'd like to continue, I'm sure Councillor Clark will join us again shortly.
Councillor Clark is just working through some issues. He shouldn't be too long.
Thank you. Apologies to those viewing. We have been experiencing some technical issues throughout the day during the briefing and now with the meeting. So I apologise for those delays.
you might like to sing us a song, Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting. Keep the viewers entertained.
No, anything but that. Save us, Doug, please.
I think David will be back on shortly.
Welcome back, Councillor Clark. We did halt the meeting and waited for your return. So apologies to interrupt you, Mr. Gowans, but please continue on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council at its February 2021 meeting resolved to support a universal compulsory service across Pyrenees Shire for curbside collection. And Council is prepared to consider exclusion of the waste and recycling service where it's impracticable for a waste vehicle to access properties. However, council officers have inspected Haigs Lane and do not believe that access is impracticable. Some works have been undertaken on the road to enable a waste vehicle to access and turn around, consistent with other sites where roadside waste service is to be provided for the first time. While it is usual council practice for council to receive a petition in the first instance and then to seek a further report to be prepared for council decision dealing with the merits of the matter, in this instance, council may wish to consider providing direction on the matter based on the universal service policy position, whether that be via a separate collection at each property or at a common collection point. A common collection point is used in a small number of other sites in the Shire where there are access constraints to individual properties. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that council receives the letter signed by the residents of Haigs Lane and requests the report to be presented to council at its August 2021 meeting for decision.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, we have a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that, please? Councillor Clark, second, and Councillor Keogh. Councillor Clark, would you like to speak on that?
Really just to ask a question to Mr. Gowans. I understand from further information I've had that the residents are actually quite happy to discuss with council continuing a service, but potentially not in Haigs Lane. My understanding would be if we accepted this recommendation, that would empower you to actually go and have discussions with them or staff, Mr. Gowan, so potentially you could reach a conclusion suitable to both parties in that context.
Through to you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Clark. That's correct. Council officers have had some initial discussions with some of the residents who have indicated that they would be open to having bins collected from the intersection of Rowlers Road and Haigs Lane, which would then eliminate the need for trucks to traverse Haigs Lane. But really that needs to be tested with each of the residents to see if that's something that that all residents would be comfortable with. But yeah, more than happy to take on board councillors' recommendation for officers to have those conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gowans. And certainly a councillor's view, as I see it, is very much we are supporting a universal service for everybody to have a bin. But I think we have some room to move on about where that bin might actually be. in the context of this situation. So happy to leave that for the officers to do some work on.
Councillor Keogh, would you like to speak on the matter?
Actually, I would. Yes, I think I'm happy with that recommendation. But as you've spoken, Mr. Gowans, to be able to talk to all the residents to sort of see they're on board, this gives us an opportunity to be able to look at those options. I think we really need to take into consideration. This is quite at the minute. You're saying the road could be improved, but currently it would be difficult to get a truck down there, as the residents have noted, and also the fact that they're very passionate about protecting the flora that's there, and they've evidenced that with a number of photographs and things like that. So this would allow all that to be taken in consideration, and to take into consideration if the road would actually become impassable with having such a heavy truck. I know we'll be able to look into that as well, but just really want to make sure that we can cover all those bases. We do want to make this an equitable service across the Shire. So I understand where the Shire's coming from too, that it's not really an opt-out situation. However, we know that we've had to look into some situations. So I think that would come up with a positive outcome. So very happy to second that recommendation. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak on this item? All those in favour? Thank you. 13.2.2, rebate to residents waste and recycling collection service. Mr. Gowans, you again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with details of a proposed rebate to be provided to ratepayers due to transition delays in the rollout of the waste and recycling collection service. The rollout of the new waste and recycling service to residents was due to commence on the 1st of July 2021. The contracts have been let for both the supply of new bins and roadside collection service. Council's waste charge, which reflects the cost of provision of the waste service, is based on a full year of roadside collection service. The rollout of bins has not yet commenced due to delays with the manufacture and delivery of bins to residents. Council have been informed by the bin manufacturer that bins will be delivered to Pyrenees Shire in the last week of July. Contractors have been engaged to assemble the bins and deliver them to properties as soon as delivery occurs. A contributing factor to delays is the undertaking of road improvement works to ensure access for waste trucks is available. Council officers are of the view that the majority of properties within the Shire will have physical access to the waste service by the end of August. There are a small number of properties that currently do not have adequate truck access. Of the 3,827 properties that will be serviced, it is estimated that approximately 30 properties may not have initial access to the service. As Council has adopted the waste charge for the 21-22 year, it's proposed that a waste service rebate be proposed to ratepayers to cover any loss of service up until the end of August 2021. And the details of those rebates are detailed in the report, but effectively equate to 2 months of delay within the service for those who don't currently have the service. And also there's a rebate designated for those who are going to be receiving the new glass service. The waste service needs to reflect the true cost of the service. The proposed rebate provides equity to ratepayers. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation to endorse a rebate of $50 to develop properties receiving a service for the first time in 21-22, and endorses a rebate of $10 to develop properties that were receiving a service in 2021 that will have a glass collection for the first time in 21-22.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors have a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Clark, second, Councillor Eason. Councillor Clark,
Mr.
would you
Mayor,
like?
if I could, I'd like to move an alternate, please. And that would be that we endorse under point 1, would endorse a rebate of $75, and under point 2, a rebate of $15. If I can get a seconder.
We got a second for that, please. Councillor Vance. Councillor
Sorry,
Clark,
Councillor Eason.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know what we're introducing is a significant change, and although this is not actually in our control, or it's not as much in our control as we would like it to be, I think it is a good time for council to err on the side of being a little bit generous to our ratepayers in the context of this. I think it's a good sign of goodwill, and if we can get the service out there quicker, all the better. But I think it's just wise that we actually give a little more at this point in time.
Councillor Vance, would you like to speak on that?
Well, only to reiterate what Councillor Clark has had to say, and with the COVID restrictions that are placed upon us, it may well be that the bins are not even going to reach their destination in time that has been prescribed. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to support the recommendation.
Any other councillors wish to speak on that? Just a question, Mr. Gowns, how will the ratepayers receive that rebate?
So that will be a separate line item within the rates notice, and the reason for bringing it to this council meeting rather than a subsequent one, when we would have a better definite understanding of the exact timing on the bin delivery, is that the rates notice requirements need to be finalised by the end of July. Therefore, it's far easier to put that rebate on the rates notice as a separate line item prior to the rates notice hitting mail boxes.
Thank you, Mr. Gowns. So, councillors, we have that alternative before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Move on to item 13.2.3, development of 3 dwellings. Mr. Gowns, this is back to you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with information that is relevant to making a determination for the development of 3 dwellings at 17 High Street, Beaufort. The application seeks to develop 3 4-bedroom dwellings on a 1,003 metre lot. Each dwelling is double-storey. Dwellings 1 and 2 include a double car garage, whilst dwelling 3 has a single car garage. Dwellings 2 and 3 propose to share a common driveway from the unnamed government road, which adjoins the eastern side of the property. Dwelling 1 will be visible from High Street, and dwellings 2 and 3 are set behind dwelling 1 and will be primarily viewable from High Street. All 3 dwellings take on a cube-like form and include flat roofs and modular elements. The application was referred to Central Highlands Water Authority and to Glenelg Hopkins Catchment Authority. Both authorities have provided conditional consent to the granting of a planning permit. Notice was sent to 16 neighbouring landowners, and public notice was also provided through council's website. 3 submissions were received, and the grounds of the submissions are detailed in the report, but include: the proposed development is not in keeping with other dwellings in the area. No new sites in other areas of Beaufort have 2-storey dwellings. Concern for the impact on privacy and noise levels. Object to double-storey houses in the area, as 99.9% of all other housing in the township is single-storey. Concern for whether the houses will be sold or rented and for the possibility of offensive noise levels. The existing homes in the street are mostly cottage style. 2-storey dwellings are not in keeping with the ambience of the street. High Street is close to the eastern entrance to Beaufort, and the proposed dwellings do not portray the country village appeal of the town. The municipal planning strategy and the planning policy framework include a range of policy objectives and strategies that seek to balance the provision of additional and diverse housing, responding to the context and character of the area. The framework encourages residential development in areas with good access to services and transport. It also requires that residential development respect the existing neighbourhood character, sense of place, and protects and supports the valued features and characteristics of the local environment. Neighbourhood character is defined by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning as being the combination of the public and private realms, every property, public place or piece of infrastructure that makes a contribution, whether great or small. It is the cumulative impact of all these contributions that establishes neighbourhood character. A development should respect and fit into a neighbourhood by respecting the scale and form of surrounding development and respecting the architectural style of surrounding development. Some of the key features of the pattern of development in High Street are the developments are set back 6.5 metres and between 6.5 and 13 metres from property boundary, and maintain setbacks on either side of the dwelling with generous front and rear yard space. A number of lots remain undeveloped and are subject to flooding or inundation overlays, creating an open space sense of feel. Lots have been developed with detached single-story dwellings, and the total building mass of existing dwellings averages 184 square metres, and the developed site coverage typically averages 23.2% of the site. The application before council utilises approximately 40% or just over 40% of the site with the proposal. Respecting neighbourhood character does not mean limiting the scope of design, interpretation and innovation. Instead, it means designing the development to respond to the features and characteristics identified in the neighbourhood. The application identifies some elements of neighbourhood character which have been incorporated into the design of the proposed dwellings. These include the use of materials which are found in the area and retention of any existing landscaping in the front setback areas. The Planning Department acknowledges that if the proposed development is approved, it will be one of the first medium density housing developments in Beaufort. It is also recognised that the existing predominance of single-story dwellings in Beaufort does not mean that double-story buildings are inappropriate. The application does not satisfactorily demonstrate accordance with policies relating to protecting or supporting neighbourhood character. And there are a number of policies within the planning scheme that neighbourhood character needs to be met. And these include clauses 2.03, which retain Beaufort's character and sense of place, retaining the established character of the existing township. Clause 15.01, part 5, recognise, support and protect neighbourhood character, cultural identity and sense of place, support development that respects the existing neighbourhood character or contributes to a preferred neighbourhood character. Clause 32.08, to encourage development that respects neighbourhood character of the area. And clause 55, to achieve residential development that respects existing neighbourhood character or which contributes to a preferred neighbourhood character to encourage residential development that is responsive to the site and the neighbourhood. Therefore, it's the officer's recommendation that council notes the objectives and strategies of the local and state planning policy framework and the municipal strategic statement of the Pyrenees planning scheme. And 2, having considered all matters required under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act, the provisions of the Pyrenees planning scheme determines to issue a notice of refusal to grant a planning permit under the provisions of the Pyrenees planning scheme.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, we've got a recommendation before us. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Clark, we've got a seconder for that. Seconder for that recommendation. Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark, would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm one of those that holds the belief that we're not elected to represent our communities, but we're elected as representatives of our communities, i.e. that we represent those views of the people on the street in general terms across the 5 of us in that sense. And this is one of those times when you kind of need to see this, I think, a bit through people's eyes. And it's not necessarily exactly right, but it's really just trying to reflect those community views. I think the other thing I've considered in the context of a decision to support this recommendation is also what council itself has done over the last 5 years, and particularly the context of Courier Park, where we've done a development of council, and we could have done developments of 300 metre square lots, but we've chosen to do them between 800 and 1200 metres to keep that rural residential, well, that more open character, I suppose, to our urban developments in that sense. Council also in the last 12 months has worked really hard and do infill development around the town and to support people just to do that kind of work, and we've got more to roll out in that space. So in that context, I think if I saw this development in a different part of Beaufort, i.e. if I saw it, you know, within 200 or 300 metres of the main shops up near the ambulance station or somewhere like that, I reckon I would probably be interested in approving it. I think it would fit much better in terms of medium density. Or if it had a range of options, if it had a couple of 1 bedrooms and a 2 bedroom and a 4 bedroom, I think, again, I would be more of a mind to think about approving it in this current location. For although it meets a couple of the requirements, as Mr. Gowan says, you know, it does use materials that are consistent with other properties in the area. In that sense of things, it does use those same setbacks off the street. I just believe it's too dense a development in this part of the township, because my view of the township in 5 or 10 years' time is that this development, if approved, will still stand out and be quite significant and not have anything similar around it in that sense. I think the area will stay pretty much as single dwellings in that context. So it is a good development, but in my mind, it's not in the right place, and hence I'm supporting the recommendation that we refuse the permit. Thank you.
Councillor Vance, would you like to speak on the matter?
Yeah, I've agonised over this situation long and hard. I seconded the motion just so that we could have some discussion about the matter, Mr. Mayor. I am inclined to agree with Councillor Clark, though, that if the proposal was in an area where the more closer to the centre of the town, it's hard to draw straws as to which is the right side, but it doesn't fit the character of the area where it is being proposed. But at the same take, I'm very much of the opinion that we should be encouraging people to come and live in our community. I just have difficulty visualising 3 different families living within arm's length of one another in Beaufort. We see it in the larger areas around Ballarat and Balan, or not necessarily Balan, I should say Melton. As I travel on the train, I see where you've got these residences that are almost touching, and it seems to me the modern way of going. Just, I've seconded the motion. I'll support the motion, but I have difficulty justifying it. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Easton?
I, like the other councillors, have thought long and hard about this, and I seriously see this recommendation as to the detriment of the Pyrenees Shire. I believe the Pyrenees Shire will only continue to grow if we invite people to come and live here. Now, some people may want to come and live here and live in a house that's 50 or 60 years old by design or character or whatever. I happen to think we want people to come and live in the format that they currently want, and this is that format. Now, people make a lot of things about it being not in character of the area concerned. I happen to think I can understand it, but in some of our discussions prior to tonight's meeting, it's interesting that most of the houses that are in that area are from different eras and are different houses. This is just another different house. People have a reticence of this one because somebody wants to fill up the block. That's the modern way of building on an area. And the most difficult thing for me to accept is that we're trying to protect this area for whatever reason, and it is opposite an industrial estate that to me is an eyesore of Beaufort. This development isn't, and it's hidden behind a row of trees. So although I can understand other people's thinking on it, I think we are putting up a red flag to anybody that wants to come into our community that may want a modern standard of living. And I can't support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillor Keogh, would you like to speak on the matter?
I would. It's a very difficult one. We do definitely want to encourage good development, and we want to be able to encourage people into our beautiful community. But our community is beautiful, I think, because we do look after what we have, and we maintain the lovely atmosphere and community ambience, for want of a better word, that we have in our beautiful little towns. And so I do think being directed by the planners and taking into consideration community concerns around this, I don't think I support this recommendation in that it's looking at a number of different issues. I would hope, though, that it would not deter perhaps the applicant thinking about something that might tie in better, and maybe even that could even be more beneficial for the types of people that or for whom the permit will ultimately be providing housing for. So I feel that at this stage, being guided by the planners and community understanding to protect what we do have, but to continue to support really good development. I second again what Councillor Vance has said. I do think at this stage I would be supporting that recommendation under those guidelines for myself in deciding on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. Yes, certainly this has provided some very healthy discussion for us, and I think it provides a few questions for us to answer, perhaps moving forward and when we think about planning and development in the future. So I think while it's important that we support and encourage development, it's important that the development is aligned with the neighbourhood character, and it's equally important that we develop how we do it. And I agree with what Councillor Clark has said about, I'm not sure that or in fact I'm confident that development, if it was somewhere else, it may be okay, but where it's proposed is not okay. And I'm worried about the density of the development and the dwellings on that size block, especially in that area there. So I just want to make it very, very clear that we're all for development, but we're very conscious about developing our communities in the proper way. And I reflect back to some the deliberative engagement committee that we've had conversations with recently, and the council plan that we have to develop moving forward. And they were very clear that about growing their towns, and that they wanted to maintain their neighbourhood character and maintain our rural settings. So I think we have to keep that in mind and make decisions about across the community. So in saying that, I support the officer's recommendation. So those in favour of the...
Mr Mayor, just before we go to the vote,
yes.
Could I just ask a final question of Mr Gowans? Council effectively is issuing a notice of refusal, which means that certainly the applicant has the opportunity to go to VCAT, certainly to test council's decision, doesn't he?
Yep. So whichever way council falls on this, it's effectively a notice of decision. So if council chose to support this, it gives the objectors the ability to, or the applicant to take it to VCAT for the conditions that might be imposed if council was to support this, and also gives the right for the submitters to take it to VCAT if they so wished as well. So whichever way this goes, it's effectively a notice of decision, and there's a set time frame which all parties who have submitted and the applicant would be put in writing, and effectively they have 28 days to respond. And potentially lodge a VCAT application if they so wished.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any further questions before we go to the vote? So all those in favour of the officer's recommendations? Those against? 3-2, so that is carried. Thank you. Move to 13.3, corporate and community services. The insurance program renewal 2021-22. Ms. Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to endorse the insurance programme renewal placed for the 2021-22 financial year. As part of good governance, Council annually purchases and maintains insurance as part of sharing risk strategies. The global insurance environment continues to experience significant challenges responding to the demands of the COVID pandemic, global weather events, and evolving cyber exposure. In recognition of these hard insurance market conditions at present, Council officers had anticipated pricing increases of about 30% average across the portfolio. Procurement outcomes on behalf of Council have resulted in better than expected percentage increases with an across the board increase of 12.77%. So this is a good outcome. This represents total insurance cost for the 21-22 financial year of $433,392.81. Due to timing constraints and the mandatory nature of needing an insurance programme to be in place by the 1st of July, the insurance programme has been accepted on behalf of Council, and you are now requested to provide endorsement of that decision made to procure insurance at the cost already stated. It is therefore the officer's recommendation that Council endorses the procurement of the 2021-22 insurance programme at a total premium cost of $433,392.81. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramwell. Got a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that, please? Councillor Keogh, second, and Councillor Easton. Councillor Keogh, would you like to speak on that?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. No, just to say that obviously this is very important that we cover and meet those risk factors. Thank you.
Councillor Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's one of the important issues that we come up with on an annual basis. It costs an awful lot, but it could cost us a lot more if we don't insure properly.
Any other councillors wish to speak on that? All those in favour? Thank you. Move on to 13.3.2, fraud and corruption policy and framework. Again, back to you, Ms. Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider the updated fraud and corruption control policy and procedure. Council's purpose is to deliver services to the community, and as such, the resources used to deliver those services are public monies. The misappropriation of resources or misuse of position in any activities associated with Council that cannot therefore be tolerated. Council has a framework focused on the prevention, detection, reporting and management of fraud and corruption, made up of a few documents, which is the fraud and corruption control policy, fraud and corruption control procedure, acceptance of gifts, benefits and hospitality policy, disclosure of conflicts of interest procedure, and public interest disclosure procedure. That framework is designed to articulate Council's zero tolerance to fraud, corruption, improper conduct and bribery, implement appropriate controls to prevent and detect fraud and corruption, and provide and facilitate processes for reporting, investigation and response to such allegations or suspicions. Council's policy and procedures around acceptance of gifts, conflicts of interest and public interest disclosures were reviewed earlier in the year. The fraud and corruption control policy and procedure were outstanding for review, and this was conducted in June. Key changes made include updating of terminology relating to public interest disclosures, resulting from a change in legislation, expansion of the policy to detail a summary of steps involved in fraud and corruption prevention and control, and just some minor terminology and wording amendments. None of the changes implemented change the fundamental intent of functions of the processes. Council's recommendation, therefore, is that council officer's recommendation, sorry, therefore, is that council adopts the following documents as part of the fraud and corruption control framework, and that is the fraud and corruption control policy and procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Councillors, we've got a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Vance, we've got a seconder. Councillor Easton. Councillor Vance, you wish to speak on that?
Yeah, a very important area. We do from time to time read about fraud, which is taking place in the local government area, and to have these documents in place is one thing, but to be able to put them into practice is the most important thing, and keep a tight rein on what happens. And I'm quite proud to think that the Pyrenees Shire has been squeaky clean all the way, and one would hope we stay that way forever. Thank you.
Councillor Easton.
Amen to that, Councillor Vance.
Any other councillors wish to speak on that? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Vance says, nothing much undermines you more than if there's a bit of a smell of this around, and council has done a really good job in the past. I just commend the officers for putting equal weight on the culture of the organisation as much as on the controls, because the culture really does determine a significant part of this. And yeah, it's a good policy.
Thank you.
Councillor Keogh, wish to speak? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. That takes us to 13.3.3, the community grants 2020 and 2021 third round. Ms. Bramwell. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I need to declare a conflict here, Mr. Mayor. I'll depart the meeting, and please can someone tell me when they need to be back? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to provide council with information on the applications received for the third round of community grants programme in the 2021 financial year, and seek council consideration and decision on allocation. 2 rounds of the community grants programme were previously opened during the financial year, resulting in an undersubscription of just over $40,000. Due to this, council resolved to invite applications for a third round of funding in June. 18 applications were received in the third round, and details of the grant applications are detailed in the report and were considered by councillors during the month at a council briefing. Some applications received were assessed as ineligible due to having already received funding from earlier rounds in this financial year. Recommendations were made to council on eligible applications considered at the briefing, and subject to council resolution tonight, if all of those eligible applications recommended are approved, this still leaves a remainder of just over $12,000 unexpended. It is normally council's aim to expend all available funding for the community grants programme to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to benefit. To aid in this, therefore, council officers further recommend that consideration of some of the applications originally assessed as ineligible under normal programme rules be reconsidered. If council approves all of the further recommended projects, this would result in community grant expenditure being $1,569 over the budgeted amount, which could be brought forward from the 2021-22 community grants programme budget, which is about to commence. It is council officer's recommendation, therefore, that I won't read it all because it is written in full and it's quite detailed, that council resolves to fund the community grant applications, the 18 original grants recommended for approval as eligible under the rules, and then a further 5 applications which were originally assessed as ineligible under the rules, but this was just due to the fact that they'd had funding allocated earlier in the year, but no other reason, and so it's recommended that they be awarded as well. So that would be an oversubscription of 1,000. I've lost the number. 1,569 which if councils agree, we can bring forward from this year's community grants programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillors, you've got a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Easton, second, and Councillor Keogh. Councillor Easton, would you like to speak on that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is one area where I have great joy in issuing money to very deserving community groups around our shire. Being the third tranche this year shows that our community groups sometimes are reluctant to apply for these money, but they are certainly deserving of it. They do the work, they volunteer, and wherever we can help them with a few dollars here and there to improve their lives and make it easier for them, I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillor Keogh, would you like to speak on that?
I know, just to second that, this is one of the really enjoyable items that we've come up on our agenda, and to be able to support all these very, very worthy groups who put this money to really good use. Very happy to bring forward that just a little over 1,000 to be able to meet those needs. And so we thank those groups who have gone through that. And I guess just to reiterate, we've tried to make the process more user-friendly, and we continue to try to make that even more user-friendly. So any groups that are listening to our live stream tonight or look at it later, please do come forward and ask for that help if you require that in filling out those forms, because this money can really go a long way and make a great difference in our communities, and particularly at this time as we're in another lockdown coming out of that, to be able to support those communities when it's difficult to get together. So I'm very happy with this item and to second it tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Vance.
Yeah, just a question of Ms Bramwell. In the recommendation number 4B, just an explanation of, it says there 5,000 to the Evoca Friends of the Pool to install staff above the picnic area. I'm just wondering the meaning of staff.
My apologies. I think that should be shade. It's a typo. I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, like Councillor Easton and Councillor Keogh, in fact, all the councillors I can speak on behalf of, that we do get pleasure in handing that money out and giving those groups, community groups and organisations some assistance, and that they very, very well deserve. A lot of them most of them are volunteers, and of course they work hard throughout the year and ongoing, and if we can give them that little bit of assistance, it's great. Most of the times the grants are undersubscribed, and I, like Councillor Keogh, I think sometimes it's a little bit daunting for some of the groups to want to apply, but I encourage everyone to have a go and apply, and we do have council officers available at the council to assist and with inquiries, and perhaps even assist with some of the application where necessary. So please don't let that be a barrier. I encourage everybody to have a go and apply, and if you need some assistance, please don't be afraid to reach out, and you'll certainly get that assistance, because the more money we can give out in the first rounds, the better, because people get that assistance in a more timely manner, the funding. So thank you for that. And all those in favour? Thank you. Perhaps someone could call Councillor Clark back to the meeting, please.
That's done, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Welcome back. We'll move on to 13.3.4, place naming proposal, Rotary Place, Beaufort. Again to you, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is to inform Council on outcomes of public consultation on place naming request for Rotary Place, Beaufort. and seek council approval to seek final consideration and approval from the Registrar of Geographic Names. In April 2021, the Rotary Club of Beaufort requested council to consider naming the green space bounded by Neil Street, Havelock Street and Livingston Street in Beaufort be named as Rotary Place. The Rotary Club of Beaufort feels the name Rotary Place acknowledges the history of the club and the service provided to the community over the past 34 years. At its meeting in May 2021, council resolved that the process for naming the green space as Rotary Place commence and be published for community and public feedback. Public consultation closed on the 26th of June without any submissions being received by council. An assessment report of the steps taken so far is included in the body of the report and concludes with an officer recommendation for council to 1, adopt the name of Rotary Place for the green space in the centre of Beaufort bounded by Neil, Havelock and Livingston Streets, and request council officers to provide the outcomes of the place naming decision and assessment to the Victorian Registrar of Geographic Names for final consideration, approval and gazettal. Thank you. You're on mute, Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Councillor Cow. Seconded, Councillor Reeson. Councillor Cow, would you like to speak on that?
I only to say I think it's a very fitting name for a great little common place and a wonderful organisation that's done a lot of wonderful work over the 34 years. So it's exciting to support this.
Councillor Reeson. Any other councillor wish to speak on that? No. I agree with you, Councillor Cow. I think it's fitting that if they could be recognised, the Rotary Club of Beaufort, they do fantastic work, as do our other service clubs. And I think with the way things are going, we're going to see more and more reliance on some of those service clubs to provide some services and assistance to the community. So it's really, really fitting. So all those in favour? Thank you. So now takes us to the councillor reports. So we might start with you, Councillor Clark, please. Ercildoune Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a bit of activity in my patch, and thank you to the other councillors and officers who filled in last week when I was representing you, Mr. Mayor, in Bendigo. But I think just to dwell on the meeting at Warborough last week, to see 100 people there, I think was a bit of a surprise, and really kind of get some sense that there is a fair bit of concern around the Western Victorian Transmission Network project and some issues in the community that aren't getting resolved. And we had a briefing today from AusNet, which I think was useful, but I think, again, we don't particularly have a lot of answers to questions. And I give AusNet credit. They've done some good work. I mean, I think the document they released a few weeks ago around what you can farm under power lines is a great step forward from where they were and deals with a number of issues. But I think there's two really key ones at the moment. And the first one really is about where the undergrounding is being considered and just how seriously that is being taken by AusNet, is my sense of the issues in the community that we will need to, as councillors, be ready to address, I think, in coming months in that time, in that sense of things. Now, the reason I couldn't be at the meeting, Mr. Mayor, was I was actually representing you at the Top Tourism Town Awards in Bendigo. And this is the first year that there's been a Top Tourism Town Award provided in two categories, so for towns of under 5,000 and towns of over 5,000. Pleased to say our next door neighbour Ballarat won the town of over 5,000, and congratulations to them. But equally pleased to say that our two predominant towns or preeminent towns of Ochre and Beaufort were both finalists in this awards out of 16 towns across the state. And I think we were the only municipality to have more than one town in that final group, which was terrific. Unfortunately, we didn't win. There's a bit of a scoop along the Great Ocean Road with Port Fairy, Timboon and Apollo Bay picking up the gold, silver and bronze. But nevertheless, I think we had a great night. There were a few community people there as well, which was terrific. And I think we can learn a lot from those towns that were ahead of us. And I'm sure that's something our tourism people will be, and our business people will be thinking about in the times to come. Just in terms of other things, I was very pleased to be with yourself, Mr. Mayor, and our CEO, Jim Nolan, in Canberra for the National General Assembly. And we had some good meetings up on the hill with Dan Toon and also with Anne Webster, our local members, and certainly enjoyed the content of the conference significantly. As Councillor Easton said a little bit earlier, we've been quite busy as councillors looking at the council plan. And I'd certainly like to say in this forum, my thank you to the community panel for the work they've given us. They've actually given us something that's pretty damn close to right, and we don't have a lot of work to do, which is a really nice spot to be in the sense of things that our views and the community's views are pretty aligned in the sense of that. And I would hope when we meet with them in August that they're pretty happy with what we've come up with as a final document, but that's quite a good thing. The other one, just to mention, in my MAB role, I've been out visiting a number of councils. I was down the Mornington Peninsula and at Frankston a couple of weeks ago, and I was also been out through Hindmarsh and Horsham in the northwest doing that. And interestingly, a couple of the councils out there were very interested in the stuff that we've been doing with the straw pallets, and I've provided some information to them about the work we're doing now at the Skipton Hospital on that initiative. So that was very well received. That's all for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. We might go to Councillor Vance, Decameron Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had our bi-monthly meeting with Timber Towns Victoria earlier in the month. Not a great deal to report there. The VAC report was brought out about 2 days after our meeting, so we were caught a little bit off guard there, but I must admit that I'm still quite concerned about that VAC report and what it's going to do for our one mill in Beaufort that supplies wood chips to the hospital for their heating and what have you, apart from all the timber that the Crick family have produced over the years. Hopefully we can still negotiate with the state government to come up with some solutions to keep Ian and his staff in business. I attended, along with yourself, the Rotary changeover dinner in Beaufort, a very enjoyable evening, and was attended by some 160 people, which was quite a large event. I was able to, at our briefing the other day, go around the inspection of the playground in Avoca and the old offices, the work that's been done on the offices in Avoca, sorry. And it's a business hub that'll soon be ready for people to make the most of. Let's hope that the Avoca community and any other businesses that want to move into the area might avail themselves of the space that is available there. We also done an inspection of the Chinese garden, and I was more than impressed with the way the Chinese garden is now presented, and it's a wonderful asset for Avoca. Along with yourself and Councillor Easton, attended the Warborough meeting on the power line proposal, and we certainly heard all the points loud and clear put forward by the people that are against the lines being above the ground. As has been said by Councillor Clark, we had a presentation today from AusNet, and it's very hard to line the ducks up and get the true facts. It's obvious that if we're going to go to alternative sources of energy, the wind farms that are in our area are going to produce a lot of that energy, and it has to be transferred back to Melbourne. So whether we like it or not, there's going to have to be a transmission line put in there. And I guess as time goes by, with further negotiations and the EES coming to fruition, we'll find how it's going to be transported back to Sydenham. But I know from discussions with people on my end of the Shire that there is certainly proposals in the wind for more wind farms to be presented around the hills between Bulgana and Stawell and out to Greens Creek and Navarre. So even though it's not common knowledge, to get that power back to Melbourne, we're going to need power lines. And this council is going to have to watch that space very carefully and protect our ratepayers as best we can, but inevitably it's going to have to happen. And I'd also like to endorse Councillor Clark's remarks about the group that helped us put the council plan together. It makes our job just so much easier. And reporting back to the wider community is obviously the flavour of the council plan into the future. So let's hope we get it right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my lot.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. We might shift to you, Councillor Eason, the Vocal Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we had a bit of a walk around Avoca at the briefing last week. The play space is a wonderful attraction. We need to do something about some extra parking in the area, and we've looked at that. And we've looked at a number of things that are happening around the town, and it's good to see those events taking place and moving along. We went to the meeting in Warborough, and I sat through that meeting and I had a thought that I understood some of what was going on and some of the community feeling. And we then had the briefing with AusNet today. And I really think that the community meeting last week is in the unfortunate position of being unable to get answers out of AusNet. And AusNet, in today's briefing, basically admitted that their community consultation wasn't up to speed. And I hope that they take that to heart, because our community is very, very important in this whole project. They need to know what, when and how, and not wait to the last minute when the EES is proclaimed and decisions are being made in Melbourne. They need to know along the way, and AusNet need to sit down with the affected farmers and ratepayers and speak to individual ratepayers individually. And that way they'll get a better understanding of what each ratepayer is thinking, and the ratepayers will get a better understanding of what AusNet are trying to do. It's that discussion that is very important. That's about all from me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. Councillor Keogh, Mount Emu Ward, please.
Thank you. I guess I just wanted to reference again, I've already spoken about this, but our female-friendly change rooms have been very well utilised by both the home and away teams. So very excited to see such a great community asset being used, and unfortunately not so recently, but still up until our latest lockdown. So that's been fantastic. Another really great community project that has been going very well is the Carnham Uniting Church Op Shop, and this has just been so well supported by locals and visitors to Snake Valley on Saturday mornings, and a real lovely little example of some local ladies getting together and putting their heads together and utilising a beautiful little resource we have in the Carnham Hall there that's connected to the church there. The church, a week after that, I visited there. There was a fantastic art exhibition put on by a local artist, a lady called Tara Poole, and the exhibition was called Thrum. So it was it really merged Indigenous understanding and immigrant experience of the area, and was very much about the local area. Very impressive charcoal works and some media visual art there as well. So again, a wonderful exhibition and example of the arts and culture that we're able to boast of in our Pyrenees Shire. That was very exciting. But I also attended, I'm really loving the opportunity to be able to attend the MAV training opportunities, which helps us hone in on our skills as councillors. And the most recent training session day I did was on strategic planning and consultation. And again, it was very apt to be honing in on those skills when we're looking at our council plan. And as the other councillors have already mentioned, being able to look at ways that we can really fully immerse ourselves in what our community wants, and to come up with ways to very intentionally be able to do that, which the latest deliberative process has really allowed us to do that. And it's very exciting, and it's a really wonderful way to pull our plan together. And I'm very excited to be able to put that out there to the community to get some more feedback on that. On that too, again, getting around our community, as councillors have mentioned, the Evoca Play Space is just awesome. Having gone to Swan Hill with the kids on the holidays to go for a bit of a road trip, on the way back, it was absolutely, there were kids everywhere and families, and it was such a beautiful atmosphere driving through Evoca and seeing such a new resource being used so well and promoting our beautiful town of Evoca. So again, can second that. I guess now just we have to make reference again, this is our 5th lockdown. And again, even though it's our 5th time, there are so many workers, there's health workers, there's teachers, there's everyone, and particularly every single one of you community members who it can be very hard when it becomes a repetitive thing, but everyone is persevering. Everyone, I feel, is supporting each other even more greatly to make sure people can get through this. But one thing I'd really love to put out there, which we have been certainly as a Shire over every single time, but I think is even more important now, is really supporting our local businesses, our small businesses, as well as we're able to during lockdown, and particularly when we come out. And I mean through, one example is our fantastic little hotel here in Snake Valley. They've switched to takeaway food in a COVID-safe way. So being able to support them as much as possible during these times, this is just hitting businesses so badly that we want to really be able to support them. So I just can't sing enough from the rooftops, particularly if you can during lockdown in a COVID-safe way. If not, as soon as we come out of COVID, that we can really be there ready to support our local businesses and keep our economy going as well as possible. And that's all from me, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. Yeah, we've had we're back into lockdown again, and that creates its own issues for us. And I've had a meeting with the deliberative engagement group, and they are a wonderful group of people, and they're very, very passionate about how we move forward with our planning and what we're going to do and across our municipality. And they've provided us with some very, very sound ideas and some really, really sound visions. And that's made our job to move forward, as mentioned previously, a lot easier. And I really thank that group for their efforts and their time and their participation and their commitment to our municipality. Attended Canberra with the CEO, Jim Nolan, and Councillor Clark, and it was actually a busy few days, but as Councillor Clark mentioned, we did get the opportunity to have some meetings with some state and federal political representatives, and I think some things may come out of that, but we'll keep up that discussion. And certainly we did put some of those things that we needed to discuss, we got those across at the appropriate time. I think the other thing that was really important up there, it was really good to network with a lot of the other councils and hear what they do and how they do it, and specifically the councils that we neighbour. And I think we can probably learn a bit from them, and they can learn stuff from us. And I think that's what we have to do in these times. Why reinvent the wheel if the wheel's already invented? So I think, it's probably timely that we have some discussions, some more discussions with our neighbouring councils and see what they're doing, and perhaps share with them what we're doing. And, the more we can share, the easier it will be. I've had the pleasure of going over and visiting the Evoca Play Space. It's very impressive, and I congratulate the group for progressing that to the stage it's at. It's really one of the better ones I've seen for a long time, and couldn't get Councillor Clark off the bouncy thing there in the play space, but it is really impressive, and it's got some of the seating, like it's really specific with how it's been designed, and it's quite impressive. I attended the meeting at Warborough, and like everyone else, I was very pleased and pleasantly surprised to see there was roughly about 100 people there. I think, and it's interesting to hear what the community had to say there, and then some of the things that were said with their meeting with AusNet representatives today. And I think, something that stands out for me is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the community about, what is going to happen, what's not going to happen. And of course, that uncertainty creates a great deal of anxiety. And I think that was fairly evident in the meeting over at Warborough. But I really commend the Warborough community for banding together and being such a strong little community. And that's really, really pleasing to see. I think that's about it for me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Easton.
I'm remiss, and I apologise to the Bendigo Bank, but I would like to say the community play space was ably supported by the local Bendigo Bank, and we appreciate the funds that they were able to put into the project to help get it across the line. And both Bendigo banks in Avoca and Beaufort do a wonderful system of providing support to their communities, and I commend them to anybody.
Yes, very good point. Thank you, Councillor Easton. They really are truly community banks, and they're very, very connected into the community, and they help out where they can. So that's a very good point. Thank you. With that, we might move to item 15, confidential items. So it's about, we're going to have to discuss the supply and delivery of a tip truck and trailer and a tandem drive grader and rear-mounted. So we'll have to move into closed meeting. Councillor Easton, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour, thank you. So we'll move into closed meeting. Thanks.